Welcome back to Kleppers Corner Today in History, the show where I dig into the past so you don't have to Google what happened today while pretending to work. Today, we're looking at September 3rd, a day that honestly feels like the history gods just threw darts at a calendar and said, yeah, let's make that one jam-packed. This is the date where nations were born, wars were declared, Mars got its first human-made visitor, medicine got its greatest accidental oopsie, and Frederick Douglass literally ran for his life in the ultimate get-out-of-Dodge move. Oh, and Oliver Cromwell? He died, and then had one of the weirdest afterlives in history. So, buckle in, folks. History today is like Thanksgiving dinner. It's way too much to digest at once, but you can't stop piling it on your plate. Segment 1, the Treaty of Paris. Congrats, America. You're free. Now pay your debts. September 3rd, 1783. The United States officially stopped being Britain's rebellious teenager and moved out of the royal basement thanks to the Treaty of Paris. Finally, America was recognized as a free, independent nation, which is basically like Britain saying, fine, you don't live under my roof anymore, but don't come crying when France stops lending you money. The treaty was negotiated by a dream team of founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin, who was basically America's lovable grandpa in a fur hat. John Adams, the guy who always looked like he needed to speak to the manager of monarchy. And John Jay, who history textbooks barely mention, but was like the Ringo Starr of the group. Technically there, but you forget he was part of it. And the British gave America a lot. Independence? Check. A ton of land stretching to the Mississippi? Double check. Fishing rights off Newfoundland? Sure. Why not, you scrappy little democracy? But let's be real. The real losers here were Native Americans. Britain basically handed over land that didn't belong to them, like a bad roommate regifting your stuff. Oh yeah, that whole Ohio Valley? Yeah, take it. We weren't using it anyway. Meanwhile, indigenous nations were like, cool, so we were your allies, fought your battles, and now you're just selling us out? Classic. But my favorite part? The treaty asked Congress to recommend that states give back property to loyalists. Recommend. That's like asking Congress to recommend everyone flosses. Technically on the books, but no one's doing it. Loyalists were left thinking, wait, we were loyal to the crown, and now our neighbors are squatting in our houses? Congratulations, you played yourself. And Britain, they weren't being generous. This was strategic. Lord Shelburne, the British Prime Minister, basically said, fine, you win, but we'll drown you in capitalism later. Because nothing says Empire 2.0 like making sure your ex is still financially dependent on you. It's the historical equivalent of giving your ex your Netflix password. Segment 2, San Marino, the world's oldest, sorry, we're independent sign. Jumping back to September 3rd in the year 301 AD. Yes, before TikTok, before America, before even the invention of forks, we get the founding of San Marino, the world's oldest surviving republic. And how did it start? Not with war, not with diplomacy, but with a stonemason named Marinus, who said, you know what? Rome sucks. I'm out. He ran to the hills of Mount Titano, founded a community, and boom, San Marino was born. His last words supposedly were, I leave you free from both men, meaning the Pope and the Emperor, which is the medieval way of saying, don't let landlords or church landlords tell you what to do. And somehow this tiny republic survived for 1,700 years. Through Napoleon? Check. Through Italian unification? Double check. Through Mussolini? Triple check. Honestly, San Marino is like the cockroach of republics, in the best way possible. It's just chilling on its little mountain like, we're still here, guys, still independent. Please keep sending tourists. Their system of government is amazing, too. 2 captains region, elected every 6 months. 6 months. America can't even pick a Speaker of the House in 6 months. And San Marino's like, nah, we swap presidents out like a Netflix password. Abraham Lincoln even wrote them a love letter saying, wow, your republic proves democracy can last. Which is ironic, because San Marino is older than America by about, let me check the math, a millennium and a half. Moral of the story? Sometimes the key to survival is not having land anyone wants. Rome, Napoleon, Mussolini, they all looked at San Marino and said, too much paperwork. And thank God for that. Because now we can say the world's oldest republic was started by a guy with a hammer who just wanted to be left alone. Libertarian fantasy achieved. Segment 3, Qatar, the little gas giant that could. September 3rd, 1971. Qatar declares independence from Britain, which, honestly, sounds less like a revolution and more like when your babysitter just says, "You're old enough. I don't get paid enough for this. Good luck." Britain had been the Gulf's imperial helicopter parent for over a century. And then one day in 1968, they were like, "We're pulling out," which left Qatar sitting there with Bahrain and the Trucial States, future UAE, like kids forced to form a group project. And surprise, they couldn't agree who got the glitter pens. So Qatar just said, "Fine, I'll do my own project." And it worked. By September 5th, the U.S. recognized them. The UN gave them a seat, and boom, Qatar was suddenly an independent state. Now, back then, Qatar wasn't the shiny skyscraper Disneyland of gas wealth it is today. It was desert, camels, and a whole lot of sand. But independence meant they got full control of their natural resources. And spoiler alert, when you're sitting on the third largest reserves of natural gas in the world, it's like hitting the Powerball every single day for 50 years. So Qatar went from unknown sand patch to global economic powerhouse faster than you can say World Cup bribery scandal. Seriously, they pulled off hosting a global sporting event in a desert so hot, FIFA had to move the games to winter. That's power. That's independence. That's also a sign of what happens when you have more cash than sense. Britain and France declare war on Germany, the world's worst group text. September 3rd, 1939. Neville Chamberlain goes on the radio and drops the line, "This country is at war with Germany." France follows up hours later like, "Us too." Australia and New Zealand chime in because when your parent declares war, you're kind of stuck RSVPing yes. Boom. World War II is officially global. The backstory? Britain and France spent the late 30s watching Hitler gobble up Austria and Czechoslovakia, nodding nervously like neighbors, pretending not to notice your buddy has stolen every lawn gnome on the block. Appeasement was the policy. Chamberlain literally came back from Munich in 1938 waving a paper saying, "Peace in our time," which aged about as well as milk in the sun. Because 1 year later, Hitler invaded Poland, and Britain had no choice but to finally put its money where its guarantees were. But here's the kicker. The declarations were big, but the action was small. They called it the phony war. Britain dropped leaflets instead of bombs, like, "Stop being mean, Adolf. Also, check out these coupons for tea." Meanwhile, Poland was being torn apart by Blitzkrieg from the west and Stalin from the east. It was like promising to help your friend move and then showing up late with a pizza after all the boxes are gone. This was the turning point where everyone realized you can't fight a 20th century fascist war with a 19th century strategy. Britain and France were still banking on the Maginot Line, while Hitler invented the original Fast and Furious military. Spoiler alert, things were about to get very unphony very fast. Segment 5. The Allies invade Italy and Anne Frank boards a train. Flash forward 4 years to September 3rd, 1943. The Allies land in Italy. General Bernard Montgomery leads Operation Baytown, crossing from Sicily to the mainland. Italy, under Mussolini, had already started crumbling faster than Parmesan on spaghetti, and the Allies were hoping to push them out of the war. And it worked. Sort of. Italy signed an armistice, but then Germany basically said, "Nope, not today," and occupied half the country. Cue 2 years of brutal fighting up the boot, one town at a time, like the world's deadliest game of climbing stairs. And then, exactly 1 year later, September 3rd, 1944, we get one of history's most tragic juxtapositions. Anne Frank, her family, and others from the secret annex are deported on the very last train out of Westerbork transit camp. Their destination? Auschwitz. It's the cruel irony of history. While Allied armies were finally breaking into Axis territory, Nazi trains were still running on time for genocide. Anne Frank's diary would later become one of the most powerful human documents of the 20th century. But on that September 3rd, it was just another example of how war is both epic in scale and deeply personal in horror. A front line can be moving forward in one part of Europe, while in another, human lives are being destroyed in silence behind barbed wire. That's the paradox of World War II. You can land tanks in Calabria and still not stop a train in the Netherlands. Segment 6. Viking 2 lands on Mars. NASA plays the ultimate game of capture the flag. September 3rd, 1976. NASA's Viking 2 lander touches down in Utopia Planitia on Mars. And let's be honest, the first pictures from the surface, they look like Arizona but with a pink Instagram filter. Rocks, dust, salmon-colored skies. It was basically the worst Airbnb ever. But this was huge. Viking 2 was part of a 2-lander mission. They weren't just there to take pictures. They were literally scooping Martian dirt to see if anything was alive. And the results? Confusing. The soil chemistry was so weird that it looked like life was there, but it wasn't. Imagine being ghosted, but by microbes. Still, this mission gave us the first real glimpse of Mars as a place, not just a dot in the sky. It set the stage for decades of follow-up missions. Without Viking, there's no Perseverance rover, no Elon Musk promising to die on Mars, just not on impact. It was the moment humanity said, okay, this planet is real. We're going to keep going back, and maybe someday we'll screw it up just as badly as Earth. Segment 7, penicillin, mold saves humanity. September 3rd, 1928. Dr. Alexander Fleming comes back from vacation, looks at his disgusting petri dishes, and realizes one of them grew mold that killed all the bacteria around it. And instead of throwing it out like a normal person, he says, wait a second, this mold is a superhero. That mold? Penicillin. At first, nobody cared. For a decade with Fleming's mold juice was basically ignored, except as a lab curiosity. But then Florian Chain in Oxford picked it up, figured out how to purify it, and during World War II, the U.S. went full Breaking Bad and mass-produced it. Suddenly, infections that used to kill people were cured. Soldiers stopped dying from cuts, and surgery became way less of a death sentence. Think about it. Penicillin is why humanity didn't just collapse every time someone got a paper cut. And it was all thanks to an accident, a sloppy lab, mold spores floating in the air, and one guy who didn't throw his dirty dishes out. Basically, humanity's greatest medical breakthrough came down to bad housekeeping. Somewhere, Fleming's mom is yelling from the beyond, see, clean your room and you'll change the world. Frederick Douglass, Escape Room, 1838 edition. September 3rd, 1838. A 20-year-old enslaved man named Frederick Bailey puts on a red sailor shirt, grabs borrowed protection papers, and boards a train out of Baltimore. It's the most dangerous cosplay in American history, and it works. By the time he reaches New York, he's free. He changes his name to Frederick Douglass and goes on to become one of the greatest abolitionists, writers, and orators the world has ever known. Now, this wasn't just luck. Douglass used literacy, something slaveholders tried to keep from him, to outsmart the entire system. He used the tools of slavery, papers, ships, trains, to dismantle his own chains. It's like if Neo from The Matrix escaped by hacking the Wi-Fi. And once he was free, Douglass didn't just kick back and relax. He turned his escape into a platform. His speeches, his books, they were living proof that slavery wasn't just morally bankrupt, it was intellectually indefensible. You can't argue black people can't handle freedom when Frederick Douglass is out there dunking on you with words so powerful they could knock your powdered wig off. Think about it. This one act of courage on this day led to decades of advocacy that would inspire abolitionists, feminists, and even future presidents. Without September 3rd, 1838, America loses one of its most vital voices. Frederick Douglass's escape wasn't just about freedom for himself. It was about showing the whole damn world what freedom looked like. Oliver Cromwell, Weekend at Cromwell's. September 3rd, 1658. Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England, Scotland, and Ireland, dies of natural causes. Which sounds normal, except this guy was one of history's biggest drama queens. He led a revolution, chopped off King Charles I's head, ran England as a republic. But when he died, people didn't know whether to bury him like a king or throw him in the trash. So they compromised. They buried him like a king. State funeral, Westminster Abbey, velvet, crown, the works. Which is hilarious because Cromwell had literally executed a king so England wouldn't do this anymore. It's like burning down McDonald's to protest fast food, then having your wake catered by Ronald McDonald. But the real show started after the monarchy was restored under Charles II. Royalists were pissed. So in 1661, they dug Cromwell's body up, dragged it through the streets, hanged it, cut off his head, and stuck it on a pole outside Westminster for 20 years. That's not revenge, that's overkill. Literally. Imagine being so mad at someone you dig up their corpse and give it a Yelp review. 0 stars, still treasonous. And Cromwell's head, it went on a weird journey. Private collectors, secret stashes, museums. At one point, it was passed around like a cursed hot potato of English history. Only in the 20th century was it finally buried in peace. By then, the head had basically seen more of England than Cromwell ever did alive. So what's the moral? Even in death, politics is messy. Sometimes you get a royal funeral. Sometimes you get hanged after dying. Sometimes you get both. Honestly, England could have just skipped the theatrics and put a post-it on Cromwell's coffin that said, "Complicated legacy, handle with care." Segment 10, conclusion. September 3rd, a day of too much history. So what do we learn from September 3rd? That history doesn't just drip, it floods. On this one date, we got the U.S. officially breaking free from Britain, while simultaneously betraying Native Americans. San Marino proving that the best way to survive is to be tiny, neutral, and stubborn. Qatar becoming independent, then rich enough to air-condition the desert for soccer. Britain and France declaring war on Hitler with the energy of a group chat no one wants to be in. Anne Frank's last journey, reminding us that even as armies marched, horror kept rolling on. Viking 2 turning Mars into a real place in our imaginations. Penicillin proving mold can do more than ruin bread, it can save the world. Frederick Douglass rewriting his own destiny and ours with one daring escape. Oliver Cromwell teaching us that even in death, you can still get canceled. September 3rd is a reminder that history isn't neat. It's messy, contradictory, heartbreaking, and hilarious all at once. It's the story of nations born and nations betrayed, of wars declared and wars survived, of scientific breakthroughs that came from moldy dishes, and of individuals who showed that one person can change everything. So next time September 3rd rolls around, don't just think of it as another day on the calendar. Think of it as history's overachiever. The day that said, "I'll take endings, beginnings, tragedies, and miracles, please, supersized." And that's today in history. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to check my Petri dishes. Who knows? Maybe I'll accidentally invent the cure for hangovers.